With UFC 274 right around the corner, it's time for me to give my official predictions on the main event in Charles Oliveira vs Justin Gaethje. Oliveira and Gaethje are both coming off huge wins and very entertaining wins at that, and this matchup is stacking up to be a very entertaining fight. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA. I make opinionated MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. The story of Charles Oliveira is a very inspiring one. The way that he was able to come up from the favelas and make it to the UFC within itself is a huge accomplishment, but also the fact that once he got to the UFC, he wasn't necessarily struggling, but he was not necessarily an amazing fighter when he started out his career, but the way that he was able to completely turn his UFC career around and get to the point that he is at today, which is the elite of the elite talent, it's just an amazing story. And on the other hand, the way that Justin Gaethje was able to improve over the years has also been great to see. Specifically the improvements that he's made in terms of just being a lot more technical out there and not necessarily brawling as much as he did in the past. Although he certainly does do it at this point, he's just a lot more technical out there on the feet. But without any further ado, let's get into the breakdown. So starting with the odds, they're very close. Charles Oliveira is a slight favorite at a -165 and Gaethje is a +145. And in my opinion, I think those odds are pretty fair. I think this is obviously a very close fight that can clearly go either way. So first, let's take a look at Charles Oliveira. So Charles is certainly one of the more technical fighters in the UFC. The way that he's able to throw his jab, his hook, cross, uppercut, everything is just so clean and technical out there. He's never off balance, he's always throwing everything perfectly, and he has great accuracy as well. But the great thing about Charles is not only does he have phenomenal boxing, but he also has phenomenal kicks as well. He's able to throw lower leg kicks, he can throw head kicks very well, he has a very nice body kick that he throws from time to time. On the feet, Charles is just a very technical, diverse striker, I would say. Oliveira certainly gets a lot more credit now than he did in the past for his stand-up, specifically after his fights against Michael Chandler and more recently Dustin Poirier, but I still think at this point certain people do underrate his stand-up abilities. But obviously Charles' stand-up ability isn't even nearly the best ability of his game. The best ability of Charles Oliveira's game is certainly his jiu-jitsu and ground game in general. When Charles takes most people to the ground, the fight is basically over, as he does hold the record for most submission wins in UFC history, which kind of just shows you how good he is on the ground. Similar to his stand-up, Charles has a wide array of submissions that he can go to. He has triangle chokes, rear naked chokes, heel hooks, arm bars, anaconda chokes, basically anything you could think of he has within his arsenal. But probably the most impressive thing about Charles's ground game is how patient he is out there and how capable he is to advance position in order to get closer to that submission. And it's pretty clear at this point that Charles is a very polished and a very elite fighter overall. But now let's move on to Justin Gaethje. So as I mentioned before, Gaethje is certainly known for his stand-up. He has a very nice right straight into a hook. He has a very nice uppercut. He has phenomenal kick, those lower calf kicks. The way that he could just take his opponent's legs away from them as the fight progresses is just very elite stuff. And also, as I mentioned before, he's just very technical overall, especially as of late. And one thing that Gaethje has as a major advantage over basically everyone that he fights is he probably has one of, if not the best chins in the UFC. The amount of shots that this guy is able to take without really getting hurt is kind of phenomenal to watch, and certainly would be a huge factor in this fight against Charles Oliveira. Now, in terms of his wrestling, Gaethje is certainly a phenomenal wrestler in terms of his takedown defense specifically, but once the fight does get to the ground, he's not necessarily someone who is all that great at jiu-jitsu and really knows what he's doing on the ground. So definitely the strategy for Gaethje would be to keep the fight on the feet, of course. But overall, Gaethje is certainly a phenomenal fighter, and I think we already knew that. But now looking into the fight, obviously, as I mentioned, both of these guys are incredibly talented on the feet, but I would probably say Oliveira is a little more technical than Gaethje is, but at the same time, obviously Gaethje is very technical. But one negative I do want to say about Justin Gaethje is if the fight goes to the ground, I think it's probably over at that point, due to the fact that Oliveira is just so great once taking it to the ground in terms of his submission game, and also combined with the fact, as I mentioned, that Gaethje isn't necessarily great at defending submissions once getting to the ground. So for Gaethje, he certainly does not want to get the fight to the ground. He wants to use that great takedown defense that he does have to keep the fight on the feet. And for Oliveira, one negative that I want to say about him him is he doesn't necessarily move his head all that well, or really at all, honestly, and we saw that in his last fight against Dustin Poirier, where he got hit, and he got hit hard, and he got knocked down multiple times in that fight. Now, one positive thing I do want to say about that is, of course, he didn't necessarily get knocked out, and he was able to not only get back up, but he was actually able to win that fight. So it shows a great ability to deal with adversity, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want to get in those situations in the first place. So for Oliveira, I would definitely say look to be more defensively sound and move that head a little bit, especially considering that Justin Gaethje is a very, very hard puncher. Now for Oliveira, even if the fight doesn't necessarily go to the ground, he's still capable of getting those submissions off, as we just recently saw it in his fight against Dustin Poirier, where he just got on his back and got a rear naked choke, and he certainly has a capability of doing that to a guy like Justin Gaethje, or really anybody in the division. So even if Gaethje is able to keep it off the ground and use that great takedown defense to his advantage, he still does need to be aware and careful of Oliveira jumping on his back and trying to pull off a submission like that. I certainly think there's a lot of opportunities for both of these guys to win the fight. If Gaethje was going to win this fight, I would probably say it would be due to a TKO on the feet, but if Oliveira were to win the fight, I would probably say it would be due to a submission. I just don't see a guy like Justin Gaethje getting knocked down or getting TKO'd with that chin that he has. But my official prediction for this fight is Charles Oliveira by a third round submission. Although Gaethje is obviously extremely good on the feet, combined with the fact that Oliveira just doesn't move his head all that often and is susceptible to getting hit, I just think it's decently likely that one point or another that the fight would go to the ground, and if that were to be the case, I think Oliveira would be able to close the show at that point, or even if the fight doesn't go to the ground, he's able to just jump on Gaethje's back and get a submission that way. I just think there's more opportunities for Oliveira to win this fight rather than Gaethje. But at the same time, obviously, I think this is a very close fight, and I could easily see Gaethje winning this fight, or I could see Oliveira winning by decision. But for my official prediction, I see Oliveira winning by third round submission. But only time will tell what happens during this fight. But overall, this is certainly a fight that I'm very excited for. Charles basically gets a finish in every single one of his wins. Gaethje has never been in a boring fight, and it's just stacking up to be a very entertaining matchup. Now, I know this video is only supposed to be about the main fight, but I just want to quickly mention my picks for some other fights on this card. I think Rose Namajunas is probably going to win this fight, and I also think Michael Chandler is probably going to win that fight. I know I'm picking two pretty big favorites, but those are just my picks for some other fights on that card. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Justin Gaethje is going to win this fight, or do you think Charles Oliveira? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.